Well, hey there. Welcome to an Ignite Press livecast. We do these when we launch books because we want to give you, the viewer, the first crack at the book and at learning more about our authors. It's also really a fun time for our authors because it's very often the first interview that they've had a chance to do in regards to their book. So we just have a blast with these. In fact, these are one of my very favorite things to do. Now, before I get to today's guest, I do want to share with you that here at Ignite Press, we specialize in helping people get their message to the world through books, the most timeless medium available to us. And so if you've ever considered putting a book to work for your brand or business or organization, reach out to us. You can just go to ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us, and set up a consultation. I would be happy to speak with you and we can talk about what a book can do for you. So enough about that. Let's get to the main event. I want to introduce you today to Valia Glytsis. Valia is our latest author, and she is the author of Unraveling Ambition, Living and Leading from the Inside Out. This is, I don't want to throw any shade on our other authors' book covers, but this is one of my very favorites. We were so excited to develop this with her, and she has been an absolute joy to work with. So Valia, why don't you come on here? How are you doing today, Valia?
I'm doing great, and thank you. I'm thrilled to do this with you at the start of launch day.
Crazy. I know it's like these various stages in publishing a book where things just become more and more real, right? Like the day you turn over your manuscript, right? That's this milestone. Like, oh my gosh, the day you see your manuscript laid out as a PDF the first time, the day you see your first cover, the day you first go on Amazon, but the day you launch, now it's real, right?
Now it's out in the world. That's it. Today's the birthday.
It is the birthday, and it is a labor, right? It does a book process definitely has its trimesters in the process for sure. But enough about that. Valia, let's talk about you. I think I would like our listeners to know more about you. So first, why don't you tell us who you are? Tell us a bit about your background before we dive into Unraveling Ambition.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder of Paradox of Leadership, and that is my baby before this book. The Paradox of Leadership, we're a leadership development firm. So really helping all sorts of organizations, all sorts of companies, nonprofits, entrepreneurs scale themselves and their businesses from a place of inside out leadership. And so what this looks like on a very practical level is executive retreats and offsites, manager and leadership development training programs, executive coaching. And it's my joy, along with my team, to have served for well over a decade and just helping to bring inside out leadership, which I'll tell you more about through the book, into the world.
Now, it's interesting that your organization is called the Paradox of Leadership, and you have a very counterintuitive title for this book too. Like the Paradox of Leadership is a counterintuitive name for a business, and Unraveling Ambition. It strikes some curiosity. Before we get into Unraveling Ambition, tell me a bit more about where'd you come up with the name, the Paradox of Leadership, and why is your organization called that?
Yeah, so the Paradox of Leadership is the journey, right? So it sparks a lot of my personal journey and how I started years and years ago. But really, the essence of the paradox is, what if leadership were not a title, a role where you sit in an organization, but we're much more the inner work, what you stand for, how you make decisions, your values out in the world, how you communicate, how you live and lead. And so the root of the paradox is, it doesn't matter where and how you find yourself. This is all about you now contributing to your life, to the world in a way that is aligned with your insides. And so that's kind of what founded the business. And then that just took off from there in terms of helping people find their inner trust, their compass, their more effective communication and listening, and all the work, of course, that we do behind the scenes. And naturally, it carried over to the book.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I think, Valia, either it's in Unraveling Ambition or it's in a conversation you and I've had, where the truth is that most leaders don't set out to be leaders, right? They're accidental leaders in some ways. They may have set out to start a company. They, though a lot of times that falls in people's laps too, right? They, like, Sunday, they weren't thinking about starting a company, and Monday something happens and they're like, well, maybe I need to step out and do something. We all find ourselves in this place, but we didn't necessarily go to school to be leaders.
That's right.
And suddenly find ourselves in this place. And it seems like this is where you fit in, or one of the places where you fit in. So, well, let's talk about Unraveling Ambition. And I want to go straight to that title, Unraveling Ambition. That when you first brought it to me, I was like, what does that mean?
What are we doing?
Tell me about this. Why do I want to unravel ambition? I want to harness it, or I don't know what I want to do, but tell us about it.
Yeah, it actually goes back to the paradox, Everett. As you and I have talked about this, we've laughed about this. So there's something about unraveling that to me felt very intentional about an invitation. And it also has a disclaimer within it. Not everyone is going to say, yay, I want to unravel, right? And so it takes a certain person, which I think is the intended audience, someone who reads that and says, yes, I am ready, kind of in this season of my life, or with this big decision ahead of me, or, with where I'm finding myself personally, professionally. It's a moment to look within and do the hard work. So I was very intentional that this is not a kumbaya, lighthearted journey. This is going to take work. And ambition was clear. I wanted you to read that front and center. That is all about the kryptonite that I have battled with my life. And of course, there's stories woven in throughout the book. We can talk about that in a little bit. But together, willing to pull the threads, being willing to look on the inside part of the journey back to the paradox, to hold two seemingly unrelated things and say, wow, what if both of those things were true? And then allow yourself to break through to the other side of, hey, how ambition can both serve you, even as you look at its shadow side. So that's always been very intriguing to me, to look at the whole picture of something, the fullness of it with intentionality, versus just pick and choose the parts that we want to. So that's where Unraveling Ambition came from.
Well, I love it, because ambition it is a double-edged sword, right? It's the thing that gives us energy and drive, but also can destroy. And so it is, there's a paradox. It is paradoxical, like, in its nature. So I'm going to have you think about a story that you want to share while I do this and bring up this, because I want everyone to know that the book is available today on Amazon. And you can grab the Kindle version, which is at a special launch price of 99 cents for a very limited time. So please, please, please go grab the Kindle version. If you want to grab the paperback, that is there as well. And be thinking about not just yourself, but other people who find themselves in leadership positions. If you were involved in business or an organization, then you know leaders, and people involved in other organizations too that would benefit from this. I think quite honestly, this is one of the very best gifts you could ever give anybody. Speaking as a business owner myself. So go grab your copy of the book. Okay, so I've given you some time. I want you to tell us a story from your book, because I know you've weaved them in and out. In fact, and Malia had asked this question. In fact, I might as well bring up her question here. She says, I know you include stories, insights, and musings throughout. Do you have a favorite that you want to share with us?
So a big part of the book, Everett, that you and I know, that people will soon find out, that's not on the title, is how much my first generation Greek American heritage has woven its way in here. So there's a lot of stories around growing up an immigrant kid, being the first to do things, inheriting that ambition, right? The root of where it came from, trying to please people. And so some of my favorite stories come out in family moments. One that's a little more vulnerable that I say, so somewhere in the middle of the book, is a story about my mother. And I was asked often of who's a woman who inspires you. And she would naturally be the person. She's one of my closest people my entire life. And she would be naturally the person that I would say. And I didn't say her name for many times as I was asked that question. And I really sat with me of why. And so I did some digging. I did some serious unraveling about that topic. And I realized that as much as she wanted for me to shoot for the stars, to do, you're capable of whatever you want, always championing me, she was living a smaller life. There were things that she had on her life bucket list that didn't happen, author being one of them. There were things that she wanted to contribute in the world that she was really good at and shrunk and lived, I'm going to use the word smaller, than what I thought she was capable of. And that was really starting to create judgment inside of me. And this is in the chapter that's called Get Curious. And, something that I share with the reader is how curiosity and judgment neutralize each other. But I had to go really deep to my curiosity. And so I asked myself, what is it that I am not kind of connecting with her in my adult age in this season of my life where I would be even more connected than usual? And what came up was the greatest gift that she gave me was not that she was one of those loud, in your face, success, all over the place type of mothers, but that she was always there. Every single moment of my life, presence was her gift to me. Presence was what made it possible for me to even write a book, to even claim the luxury and privilege of saying, wow, what if we unraveled ambition? So that's a really touching story for me of looking at her from different aspects as an adult, now being a mother myself, realizing how presence matters more than anything. And that was one where I had tears in my eyes as I was writing that, especially as I enter a new chapter with her where we live very far apart, where, health and aging is top of mind, especially as an only child, as a first generation child. So that was a story that I hope touches people, no matter what kind of first they are, that there's something reflective there for everybody.
I think it's powerful, Valia, because your perception of, sometimes parents lead by going, hey, see what I'm doing, come do this. See what I'm doing, do this. See what I'm doing, do this. And others don't have the ability to do that. Instead, it's like, see what I'm doing, let me push you forward. Let me push you forward or carry you up, to, in ways that they just couldn't themselves. It was interesting that you brought this up, because one of the questions we have in the audience here from Kelsey, she says, hey, I grabbed my copy too. I can relate to your first generation experience. I'd love for you to speak more on your experience as a Greek American and how that played into your writing. Is there something specific about being Greek American that really played in to this?
It's a great question. And I think that, I giggle because there's a lot of my big fat Greek wedding humor sprinkled throughout. I grew up with a bunch of friends and family, and we stuck together like an amoeba because we didn't know what we were doing. Our parents weren't clear on the rules of the road when it came to some basic things around ambition, right? Education and money, and where were we going to go to school, and then college after that, admission processes. I mean, so much of this was a comedy show of, kind of the blind leading the blind. And so there's a lot of just funny personal stories. One I'll tell really quickly is I went to Georgetown undergrad. And, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but the process was really just winging it. We had been there. We had some relatives nearby. I applied to a bunch of schools. That was a nice big acceptance letter. And my parents' names are George and Georgette. And so we just kind of concluded together that Georgetown was the right place. But that's the type of stuff that just finds its way in the book. And I can only laugh looking backwards of, kind of how granular and like salt of the earth that first generation narrative wove into every single one of my ambition moments.
That's great. That's funny. George and Georgette. So of course, Georgetown, it just makes perfect sense. Where else could you go? Right. Zelda asked a good question here. Let me pull this up. She says, what do you hope readers will take away from your book, especially emerging and established leaders who read it?
So there's so much. And I think that's what makes it hard for me to convey the essence. So throughout the book, you'll find different altitudes, right? So for people who want really practical insights, that's what I hope they get out, right? I've got tips and leadership techniques from my coaching practice on how to manage your energy better and your time, how to listen in a way that really exudes empathy, how to build trust with someone you're having a hard time building trust with. So there is, years of executive coaching bundled into these stories. So I hope that that's what an emerging leader gets if they want a really practical toolkit. On the flip side, if you saw that word unraveling and you say, I want to go on the journey, I'm ready to do the inner work, that's what I hope you get, right? A different altitude of Unraveling Ambition is going to be about me discussing, like I mentioned with my mother, how we love, how we forgive, and what that looks like, how we think about, our place in the world and sort of a broader, more spiritual leadership aspect, our relationship with time, and what if it were something that took care of us rather than something we're always fighting against. So if you fall on that side of the spectrum of really wanting to do the self-actualization and deeper dive work, I hope that that's what you get out of it. A trusted resource, someone who is there holding your hand chapter by chapter, not just helping you with the how, but knowing that you're understood and seen. So it's sort of a, from practical to quite spiritual in nature. And so I hope there's a little bit of something for every type of emerging leader in there.
All right. So now you've made me curious. So, by the way, I love as you speak about altitude when we have this paper, there's the paper airplane on the cover here. It seems so appropriate. One of your chapters is called Stay on Your Own Journey.
Mhm.
What can you tell us about that?
So stay on your own journey. There's a lot of woven in aspects of my husband and my relationship, which has been just a treasure trove of learning for both of us as we kind of extracted out of our first generation Greek American lives and created our own life and moved to California and so on and so forth. What I love about that chapter, so stay on your journey, is interesting in that when you say it out loud, you're talking about really detaching from attaching to the other person's part of the journey. So it's kind of, hey, you stay on your own journey. That's not my business right now. And I support you and I love you and I'm holding space for you as a colleague, as a partner, as a friend, but stay on your journey. But there's also like an internal little reminder there of, oh, Valia, like stay on your own journey. This is not yours. So the richness of that chapter is for my fellow people pleasers, for my fellow people who have imposter syndrome, are always trying to make people proud, to do more in the spirit of ambition. That's a real cue, right? And a cousin concept in there is called detached involvement. How can you be so involved with your friends, with your family, with your career, with your ambitions even, but ultimately detached from the outcome? Ultimately holding space and kind of cultivating a deeper trust, a deeper knowingness of your leadership, that you will figure it out, that all is well, but stay on your journey is one of those prompts that can kind of reframe mental chatter and allow you to be really clear on what is yours and your responsibility and what actually isn't, and you've only taken on through habit. So that's a little teaser of that chapter.
Wow. So I want to ask some questions that just kind of through my experience as an entrepreneur over several decades. What do you what do you see as some of the great challenges that happen to people as they approach leadership that they didn't expect or didn't prepare for? What are some of the challenges that you find most striking?
I think one of the biggest ones, Everett, is really thinking about, to your point, thinking about scale, right? We get so comfortable in the way we do things, especially with ambition, right? We have our way, our approach, what feels aligned with our brand. And then when it's a question of scale and making more impact, right? And like you always say, igniting that spark, right, in someone else, it can't be your way or the highway anymore. And so one of the biggest challenges that I think people anticipate with excitement, but is often experienced with more dread and stress, and a lot of unraveling and relearning, is the ability to scale beyond you. So how do you teach? How do you trust? How do you let go? How do you have faith in the people that you bring on in your teams and the types of clients that you bring, to then say, you know what, I did my part. And then consciously and intentionally, you train, you let go, and then you allow people to get to the finish line the way they're going to get there and actually be bigger and better because of it. So that integration of scale is probably one of the biggest things that I see.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. You also made me this thought just came to my mind, that, I naturally am a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal employer, and all of my employees would tell you what a great and phenomenal employer and leader I am. And then I think a lot of people think that, and a lot of people aren't, right? Probably myself included. Where do you get where do you get to that? Is there an assessment that you can provide to leaders to help them understand, really, are they that great a leader, and where are their deficits that they can address, rather than just assuming that, hey, I run a business, so I must be great?
Yeah. It's funny because I actually see both sides of the spectrum. There's that of like, well, I must be good, right? I've done this, I know how to do this, and now I'll just do it at scale. But what I see more of is the opposite of, I'm not good enough. How did I get in this seat, right? Imposter syndrome starts coming up. What if I can't do this? What if I fail? What if it were luck that got me here? So whichever end of the spectrum, I would say with a little bit of tough love, know that it's just your mental chatter, right? Know that your brain is making stuff up any which way. And so the work then is, of course, different rounds of feedback, making sure from a 360 perspective, you're getting people who can comment, right, on your leadership, on your style, on your management, on your approach. It's one of the big works that we do at Paradox of Leadership, is take leaders through that conscious assessment. But more so, right, really getting clear on your own reflective nature. I find that leaders who go too fast and who are just day to day getting through to-do lists, and the ones who aren't intentional about pausing, learning, showing humility, knowing that there's more to learn from a growth mindset perspective, those are the ones that get into trouble. So if you are willing to pause, to know that in each one of your weeks or months, there's a reflective season or moment or hour where you take yourself out to lunch and say, okay, what went well here? What could have been different? Where are the gaps? Where am I still learning and growing from a strength-based perspective, right? What am I really good at, and how is that coming out into the world? What are the shadow sides of my strengths? Where have I over-rotated? So the book is sprinkled with really powerful self-coaching questions. It's just the lens through which I see the world, and I want to offer our readers. So I think time and space for intentional reflection is what activates the growth mindset that then says, hold on a second, I'm part of something bigger. Where do I fit in, and how do I continue my growth and development path?
You make me think of the retreats that you do, the executive retreats that you do, where you must give that kind of space. And I would think that would probably be some of the very most valuable time any of your clients could ever spend, is, in that type of an environment. Valia, if you would, let us know how people can reach you, if they want to experience some of the other offerings that your company has to offer. Where can people find you?
Thank you. So the best place, and to your point, Everett, our favorite thing of what we do is take teams away and have those immersion experiences. It's life-changing. And that all belongs under kind of our parent umbrella of the Paradox of Leadership. So the simplest way is just the website, and you'll see it on the screen under my name, but the full theparadoxofleadership.com. And if you remember my name more easily, you can also just reach out at leadwithvalia.com, where we can tell you all about kind of speaking, keynotes, the retreats, manager training programs, all that we do.
Excellent. I think that what you're doing is so important, because I you know it's just that whole thing of leaders fall into leadership positions whether they intended to be there or not, and many of them do it without any training whatsoever. It's kind of like child rearing. Like, we We become pregnant and suddenly we have a child, and then the hospital sends us home with this child with no training. They didn't put us through any testing or anything. And
Someone's at the front door.
that was wonderful, by the way.
There you
Whatever
go.
I thought it was it's actually perfectly timed, because that's what happens. They send you home. You're like, what do I do with this child?
There you go.
Right? What do I do? And you can't believe they sent you home with the child, with that child. And I think sometimes that's exactly where we sit in business. I can't believe I'm responsible for running a business now, and how am I supposed to do it? Especially, like you said, as it scales.
Yeah.
As things get bigger and more employees, and maybe you have to transition from that solopreneur attitude into and away from mom and pop to the more professionally run organization. Also important, so important. So Valia, we have just a couple minutes left. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your organization or your book before we sign off?
I think just more of a thank you. So many people have reached out already with excitement, with anticipation, with just their love and support. And, you said at the start, Everett, that this sounds like a glamorous process. Oh, we're launching a book today. But what it takes behind the scenes is oftentimes very unglamorous. And so, one of the chapters, Allow the Paradox, is just, again, holding two things that you're like, this is ridiculous that these both things are happening in the same moment of life. And that's how I feel going into today. I've got a sick, toddler downstairs. My husband and I are just getting over a cold. There's work emergencies happening, and we're launching a book. And so there's something about just gratitude for the messiness of the journey and people being willing to see all of me and all of us. And I hope that finds its way into Unraveling for each and every one of you. So just tremendous gratitude for the support, and Everett, to you and the whole Ignite Press team for making this dream a reality.
Well, I got to tell you, you have been a joy to work with. You absolutely, and we are grateful for the opportunity to help carry your message to the world. So, Valia, thank you again. Fantastic. Good luck on the rest of the launch. And we'll be talking obviously very soon as we move forward and monitor this launch going forward. So thank you
so much.
All right. So everybody, just as a reminder, you can pick up Unraveling Ambition today on Amazon. You can get the paperback or the Kindle. And the Kindle is set at a launch price of 99 cents for a very limited time. So go grab that copy now. And then if we can be of assistance to you by helping you get your book to the world, to all the way through the development, the editing, layout, cover design, and publishing process, reach out. Just go to ignitepress.us, where you can schedule a consultation directly with me. So thank you very much. And on behalf of all the Ignite Press team and Valia, thank you so much for joining us today. Take care and God bless.